Hey, welcome back to the Healthy Living Scottsdale podcast. I'm your host, Coach Zach. I am in studio with Coach Brandy Mead.
Hi, everybody.
And it is just the two of us, which means we're talking about nutrition. And today we have probably something that's going to shock some people, right? So we are talking about the downsides of intermittent fasting and why it prevents people, especially young females, from losing weight. Mm-hmm. And I know that over the course of the last, 5 years, intermittent fasting has really become super popular, both from like an overall health standpoint and weight loss. But it's not for everyone.
Right.
And there are a lot of health benefits to intermittent fasting. If you are a male between the ages of 25 and 50 years old and you strength train, intermittent fasting is probably like a pretty good plan for you, right? However, if you're a young female, what we see pretty often is that there's this vicious cycle. Women wake up and they're not typically hungry, which is a good thing, because if you wake up and you're not hungry, this would apply to everybody, but if you wake up and you're not hungry, that probably is an indication that you have healthy blood glucose levels. Mm-hmm. So you don't get these like peaks and valleys, which is good because you avoid you avoid crashing, craving sugary foods, and then spiking your blood sugar and kind of just this vicious cycle. Much easier to lose weight and have sustained energy when your blood glucose levels are fairly, small waves, right, as opposed to big peaks and big valleys. So very common, especially with young women, as they wake up, they skip breakfast. Then they go to a HIIT class, right? Like an Orange Theory, Fit Body Boot Camp, F45, something where it's high intensity interval training for an extended period of time, hour-long class. And they just get after it, right? And they're working really, really hard. And then they get done with their workout. Little time goes by, maybe an hour or two. They have like a late breakfast or just lunch at that point. Then they crash. Their energy is toast for several hours. So usually, like 1 to 2 o'clock, energy tanks. They need a little caffeine boost for a couple of hours. And then they eat dinner, they go to bed, right? That's I've just walked you through like a typical day. Well, what happens is they crush a workout with no nutrition, no fuel to make it through that workout, which is why their blood sugar then drops. Right. And then they get fatigued. And during their workout, they broke down their muscle tissue and used it for fuel, right? Because glycogen is stored in the liver. If you don't have it in the liver, you have to tap into the muscle tissue in order to use the fuel. Right. So they basically ate their muscle tissue. Yes. To make it through the workout. Then their blood sugar dropped, they crashed, they went to bed, they went to bed, they rebuilt that muscle mass overnight, and then they got up and they repeated the cycle over again. Right. So that is why pretty much everybody plateaus from like high intensity interval training. If they're doing that all the time, it's like, it's too intense. Their diet isn't designed to meet the needs of that. They eat their muscle tissue, they go to bed, they rebuild it, and then they just repeat that process over and over and over. So they never move the needle, right? They never move the needle. And you're not tapping into fat. You're not using fat during your workout. Like it would take hours and hours for your body to eventually, like you would have to be completely empty of glycogen and glycogen stores in order to get to a point where like, okay, now I'm going to use fat as fuel, right? And so they're not burning fat. They're eating away at their muscle tissue. They rebuild it overnight. They eat away at it. They rebuild it overnight, and they never move the needle. Right. For young females, this is usually amplified because they don't eat enough. like during that window that they actually are eating. They're not getting enough protein. It messes up their metabolism. It messes up their cycle. They have irregular cycles. They have spotting throughout the month. Their progesterone and their estrogen are rising and dropping at the same time when they should be going opposite directions. Right. It creates a complete storm inside of somebody.
Right. It wreaks havoc on your hormones.
It does.
And over time, I think a lot of times you'll notice that energy levels, because of all of that's happening within the body, energy levels plummet. And that HIIT workout that someone used to get up and do and really be able to go really hard during the workout, that energy is not there. And so then even getting through their workout is really hard because they don't have the energy they need to get through the workout. And like you said, it's just this cycle that continues. It's really hard to gain skeletal muscle mass when you're in that cycle as well, because like it's catabolic, you're not able to build that muscle.
Yeah. And to your point, I'm glad you said that, because what happens is they push that energy drop like earlier and earlier and earlier into the day.
Yes.
Right. And so eventually they get to a point where they're just fatigued all the time.
Right.
And they end up starting to get injured. They can't recover from their workouts. There's, elbow, like it happens at the joints. Typically there's elbow inflammation, there's knee inflammation, shoulder, like things just start to break down. And it's like you have a 28-year-old female who should be like living their best life.
In her prime. Right.
Yes. And now all of a sudden there's so many women that just got offended that I said 28 is the prime. It's not. You should feel amazing for at least the first 40 years of your life.
And beyond.
And beyond. Sorry, Brady. The first 50 years of your life. But no, it just sends young women into this horrible, vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and a lot of times what I see happen is because, they're not eating during, and this is for men and women as well, but they're not eating during the morning, during the day. And then they tend to follow sort of like a binge pattern once they do break their fast and start to eat, because they're really pretty hungry at that point.
Yeah.
And not feeling satiated. And so then oftentimes they'll crave those foods that are not quite the healthy choices, processed foods, and just, kind of binging on things that they maybe normally would not be craving if they were not following that cycle.
Yeah. And the reason this is amplified with females is because, and not men, is what we know about a man is like he'll get to 5 p.m. and it's dinner time and he's going to have a 16-ounce steak. He's not going to have like 4 ounces of steak. He's going to have 16, right? So he's still getting in a lot of the nutrients. Now it's still harder to do in a shrunken window, right. But men will just be like, yeah, I'm going to eat as much as I possibly can in this meal. And so they're eventually giving their body the fuel that it needs, and they're not in this constant deficit.
Right.
Right. What's the simplest solution for a female? Like, how do we solve this problem?
I think, number one, prioritizing protein throughout the entire day. And I actually think the opposite. I think it's better to front load your day with your nutrition. So to start eating protein for breakfast, we'll start with having breakfast in general, eating breakfast, but making sure that you're prioritizing protein, eating breakfast, eating lunch, like eating your 3 meals, and, then also having a snack that is sort of supported or surrounded by protein. And continuing that throughout the day, then your body is not going to go into that catabolic state. You'll have the protein that you need when you're strength training to, as your muscles are, going through that muscle protein synthesis at night, you'll be able to fuel that process and get stronger, gain more muscle mass. You're not going to feel as fatigued and as lethargic. It'll help with your sleep. So I think really the easiest thing is to just wake up
and have 30 grams of protein.
30 grams of protein for breakfast.
If you're a young female, like even if you're not hungry, 30 grams of protein and you're going to avoid that crash in the afternoon.
Right.
You can do your hard workout and you're going to be okay, right? As long as the rest of your day looks decent, but usually just by adding the 30 grams of protein in when you wake up in the morning, within half an hour of waking up, it solves majority of those problems. Like, it breaks that cycle.
Right.
Yeah.
And so many people that have transitioned into that approach where they are having 30 grams of protein for breakfast report back that they feel so much more energy during the day. They're able to put more effort into their workout, put more effort into their work, whatever they're doing during the day, and they aren't feeling that crash at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I don't think this episode would be complete. This topic would be complete if we didn't talk about like fasted cardio, because there's always this, people they hear that term, oh, I should do fasted cardio, right? Fasted cardio is done by typically like bodybuilder type people that want to have an amazing physique or compete with their physique. Right. And so fasted cardio is not fast, right?
Right.
Fasted cardio is not fast. It's slow, steady state, zone 2. Your heart rate is slightly elevated. And for people that want to do fasted cardio, they still need amino acids, right? Because that is the fuel. Like, protein breaks down into amino acids, and that's how your muscle tissues function, repair themselves, right? Function and repair themselves. So for like, if you're somebody that's like, hey, I really want to tap into the fat, right? I want to do fasted cardio. I've heard about that. Well, what you need to do if you're going to do fasted cardio is you need to have branched chain amino acids, BCAAs, in the morning before you do your fasted cardio. That won't break a fast. There's like 6 calories in it, right? It's not going to break a fast, but now you're giving your body the amino acids that it needs so that you don't eat your muscle tissue, right? You don't eat your muscle tissue. And if you're working at a very slow, steady pace, you're fasted, finally you can tap into your fat stores and we can actually use some of that fat as like fuel. But there's a specific process to that. If you think you're just going to not eat breakfast and go to the gym and work out and you're doing fasted cardio, it doesn't work like that. Right. And that's why you haven't seen the results from it, right? Yeah. Your experience is my testimony that this is true.
And I think there's a lot of new research and data around fasted cardio, and that that may not have the impact even for bodybuilders that they think it may have. That actually, I think there's more benefit to not doing the fasted cardio, to be fed and to be fueled for those workouts.
Definitely healthier for your metabolism long term.
Yes.
Right. So like, they might be doing it very, they might be doing that for a limited period of time too, to prep for a show. It's not necessarily like a long-term sustainable thing.
Yes, it's more for the extreme, right? For the extreme short period of time, and usually bodybuilders that are doing that don't, it's for a couple of weeks and then that's it, and then they go
show
back
prep, and then they hated their life so much that they're like, I'm not doing that for the next however long until I've got another show coming up, right? So just be aware, guys. I think, not a lecture, but a lot of what you see is like effective. There's a specific purpose behind and strategy behind why people are doing those things. You shouldn't just be like, oh, well, it worked for them, and then you have half of the information and you go and think that that's going to work for you, right? Yeah. But if you're somebody, especially a young female, but really anybody who skips breakfast, calls it intermittent fasting, and then you're stuck in this vicious cycle where you don't feel good. You might not even know that your energy levels aren't as high because it's been so long since it's typically a gradual thing. You don't just like next day lose your energy, right? So if you don't feel like your energy is optimized, right? And you're following that pattern, there's a better way.
Right.
We need to do more strength training, less HIIT training. We need to make sure that you're getting the protein and the amino acids and the nutrients that you need throughout your day to fuel your lifestyle. And you can do that and lose body fat and gain muscle mass and feel amazing simultaneously. You just have to understand the plan, the roadmap for that. And it's easy. It's not that hard to do. It's not that hard to do. So, apply your effort wisely.
Exactly.
All right, guys, we'll be back next week with more great stuff. Thank you so much for listening to the Healthy Living Scottsdale podcast. Do you have a question that you'd like for us to answer live on the podcast? If so, all you need to do is head over to the Apple Podcast app on your iPhone and do 3 simple things. First, leave us a rating and review telling me what you think of the podcast. In that review, ask anything you want related to health, fitness, or nutrition. And if you want a shout out, leave us your Instagram handle or name. That's all you have to do. Then listen to hear your questions answered live on the next Q&A episode.